Welcome everyone to week 6 of the Indiana Strength All Access. And just to thank all of you presenters today and the past and in the future, and then everyone that comes and just shows support. When you guys are here, that only helps us, show support and make us grow and get even better. The feedback that y'all give us is insurmountable. So just keep it up, and we're really excited to move forward with this coming up. But today, very, very excited to have this all-star cast of group and topics that were going on today. All of these coaches have impacted me in some capacity, and I'm just super excited. So we're going to start off with Beth Byron from Ohio State. We're going to be talking about rep integrity. And Emily Schilling will be up next on the University of Illinois, talking about the University of Illinois volleyball program. Got Marissa Viola with play, a variety of topics. I can't wait to hear about this one: authenticity, discovery, and resolution. And then we'll round it up with Jeannie Rankin with Eastern Connecticut State, talking about diversity and strength and conditioning. So should be a really good day. But first up is our very own Dustin Snyder. Will be introducing our first speaker.
All right, guys. So like Lainey said, today starting off is going to be Beth Byron. Beth is a master strength and conditioning coach. She was a former swimmer, but now is a cyclist. Enjoys doing that on her spare time on nice days. Originally from Massachusetts, but she's been to some other places. She's been to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, University of South Florida, West Virginia University, University of Texas, and joining Ohio State Buckeyes in the fall of 2019. She's now working with volleyball and rowing there. She is eternally grateful for family, friends, mentors, coworkers, coaches, and athletes that the Lord has placed in her journey throughout life, whether that be in coaching or outside of that. During this, I've found some things that were some irony in a lot of these things, and a lot of firsts that I noticed. So today is our first all-female lineup. Beth is the first speaker, and her first favorite quote was Proverbs 31, where the Bible paints the picture of a perfect woman. So Beth, just give us another first for today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Coach Snyder, for that introduction. Very generous of you. And I just want to say thank you to the entire Indiana Strength staff for putting together this awesome all access event every single week. I've enjoyed coming on and listening and learning from so many other presenters. So I'm just honored to be asked to contribute. So I really hope that I can provide you guys some valuable insight today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get rolling here. All right, we good? Everyone can see that? Awesome. All right, so yes, rep integrity, and I want to talk about just applications and coaching and how that helps us with adapting to changes. So where are we going today and why it all matters? So I just want to talk about something that's extremely important to me, and I know to so many other people. This is important because with this quality, I think the way that we show this quality to others and how we observe this quality in others massively impacts our relationships and our effectiveness to do our jobs as coaches. So today we're going to talk about integrity, and for a lot of us, it is probably one of our core values. And I want to talk a little bit more about the applications to it in coaching, and then also in our own personal development as coaches and as people. So. And then next, we're going to talk about adapting to changes. We all know that change is inevitable, but also having deep roots and strong foundations in your core principles helps you to navigate those changes more successfully. And then finally, I want to touch upon our abilities to empower others to use their strengths and grow, which obviously is a big part of what we do every day as coaches. So integrity, I think we probably all know the definition of integrity. Yes. So I want you to just think for a moment what that definition is. Think about what it looks like to put that into action. So according to Webster's dictionary, here is your very thorough definition of integrity. And I just want to touch upon what really resonates with me personally. This is third one, the quality or state of being complete or undivided, completeness. The other thing that I think really paints a good, clear picture for me personally is the Latin root word in which we get integrity from is also the same word that we get integer from, as in a whole number, right? So whether you have $3, you have 3 M&Ms, you have 3 cars, 3 is always 3. You add one more to that, it's always going to be 4, right? So there's that consistency and that soundness to it. So as far as integrity in life and in training, I like to use some cliche quotes. So just bear with me on that, just because I find that they stick, right? They stick in your mind, and it helps us to understand and apply things better. So I think as far as in life and in training, whether it's our personal and moral integrity or it's repetition integrity, it's kind of how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I really believe that the young adults that we have been entrusted to work with, they need to learn this. They need to see that exemplified by us and by the other people around them, right? And so we have a great responsibility to do that. So I want to talk next about why integrity is so important. But I just want to preface this and say that these are my observations from my personal experiences. This information is not from research that I've done in organizational psychology or other similar fields, right? But just from my experiences over the years. So if anybody wants to ask questions or talk more about this afterwards, I'd be more than happy to do so. Just feel free to reach out to me. But why I believe integrity is so important is because ultimately it helps to build trust. And we know that's so important, that trust in coaching and building relationships with our athletes. So, and this little cog here in the middle, that little frequency, that is a huge key component because there's so many easy, actionable ways that we can exercise integrity every single day as coaches when we're teaching our athletes and we're holding them accountable to high standards, right? But frequency is important. It has to be carried out consistently on a day-to-day basis. And I truly believe that it's an accumulation of seemingly small but very frequent interactions that build that trust over time. And we can literally do this with every single one of our athletes that we have the opportunity to coach. And I want everyone to just think for a moment. Their names and faces will probably pop into your head very quickly. But just think about some of the athletes that you're working with right now, or maybe in the past, who you connected with maybe a little more closely than others, or even the athletes that they were the most challenging for you to work with, or they needed extra time, they needed extra energy, they required extra work, and they required extra attention from you because they were difficult and they were challenging. But through all that time and energy you poured into them, there was kind of an uncommon bond that's built in there, right? So you kind of can go a little deeper with certain individuals. And you're not necessarily going to do that with every single one of your athletes, and that's okay, and that's normal, right? But you are able to pour into every single one of your athletes on a consistent basis with the seemingly small, minute tasks, right? And that's where I think rep integrity really comes into play and is so important. And for the sake of time here, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about rep integrity and like every single application and exercise here. But I think first and foremost to understand with proper alignment and movement patterns, number one, from a health and safety standpoint, that's got to be consistent because ultimately we're trying to build more resilient athletes, right? We don't want to cause injury or harm in our training sessions with our athletes. So we need to be very, very intentional and clear about how we're going about doing that. And then when you're looking at the other factors, whether it's time under tension, total volume, and intensity, and all those other things, altogether, they have an impact on the total physical development of the athletes as you're implementing these into your training programs, right? So again, whether you're trying to teach and demonstrate and continue to coach your athletes through maybe a basic exercise like a kettlebell swing and emphasizing that it's a hinge and not a squat. We know over time that if they're consistently not hinging and they're squatting, that posterior chain development is not going to be the same, right? So that's just a quick example. I think tempos are another like huge obvious one. We all know what it feels like, and while we're doing it and after we're done doing it, doing those longer eccentric tempos, time under tension, right? So it matters. It's massively different. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we just got to be very mindful of those adaptations that are occurring. And then finally down there at the end with consistent language, right? Calling the exercises what they are, that's helping our athletes learn and understand what they need to be doing and where they're at with you, right? So this is not to get into a debate about, depths of squatting and a quarter squat versus a full squat, right? It's just that you're being consistent with it. If you're in a certain training part of your training block in a year and you want to be more sport specific, and maybe you are doing quarter squats, but your athletes understand that there's a difference between that quarter squat versus maybe that full squat that they were doing in the off season, right? So just being consistent with that language helps them to understand, helps them to learn, and then you kind of have a more solidified compass, so to speak. And understand that no 2 reps are going to be identical ever, right? Just like in sports, no 2 plays are going to be identical. No 2 free throws, no 2 corner kicks, no 2 starts coming out of blocks are going to be identical. However, there are fundamental principles to each movement and each sports skill that are necessary for it to actually be what is intended to be. So in strength training reps, agility drills, conditioning, speed work that you're doing, you have to set the foundation. So as you're teaching your athletes, they understand what the standards are, and they need to be consistently met so that the intended training objective is achieved. And we all know that there are specific adaptations to impose demands. And so if your demands or your standards change, then so do those adaptations that the athletes are going to experience. And I think that this picture and the quote that goes along with it just really hits the nail on the head on the legendary coach, John Wooden, talking about repetition and how important repetition is. So think about the massive impact that rep integrity has on overall learning and development. And thinking about, we know how it's intentional practice that gets us the successful results that we want, not just random, unfocused, kind of distracted movement or practice, right? We want to be very intentional with our practices. So rep integrity obviously goes into play there. All right, so next we're going to just go a little bit deeper into integrity. Now that we're talking about, we kind of established that from a rep integrity standpoint, but for you as a coach in your development, think about, identify what is critical to you, what your core values are. We touched on that a little bit from a movement standpoint, like what's fundamental for, a certain drill that you're doing, what's fundamental that needs to be included in, say, a power clean if you're using that, for example, right? So what are your non-negotiables there? Do the same for yourself, personally and professionally. Ask yourself, what are my non-negotiables? Wrestle with it, take time to figure it out. You might come up with it, maybe a few months from now, and then maybe a year from now that can change, and that's okay. So work through that. When you have strong convictions in what you believe, it becomes very natural to follow through and live that out with integrity. So the next thing is to evaluate if what you believe is right and it's true. And that's not an easy thing to do. So you want to look to mentors and people that you really trust and you can learn from, that you can check yourself on, and that they're going to be honest with you and they're going to tell you the truth when you need to hear it, and not just what you want to hear. So ask yourself, who are the people in my life that I can trust to speak the truth when I need it? Who are the people that I trust that have discernment and good judgment? And lean on those people to kind of help guide you through this process. And just want to touch on this other quote real quick, in that you get what you tolerate, right? So kind of not only in the weight room or in your agility and conditioning session, right? Like if we get sloppy reps or we get kids that are consistently showing up late, all the time, well, you're probably tolerating it if it keeps happening, right? So same thing in our own personal and professional lives. So it's just something to kind of be introspective of. So how does this help us with adapting to change, right? So I really believe that, it's going to help us when we have those foundations, those core values, and we can live them out with integrity. It kind of helps us navigate those challenges. It kind of gives us a true north on our compass, so to speak. So another cliche quote for you guys here, be a cockroach and not a dinosaur. So what I mean by that is both cockroaches and dinosaurs were around at the same time. But unfortunately for the dinosaur, it could not adapt to its environment and it eventually became extinct, right? Cockroaches, on the other hand, they can crawl, they can fly, they can swim. And so unfortunately, they are still with us today. So for us as coaches and going through this profession, we want to be more like the cockroach, right? We want to not become extinct, and at the very least, and we want to not become irrelevant, right? So we need to be able to adapt with changes, and we recognize that change is hard. And something that I've kind of learned over time is that as much as change is hard as you're going through it, it's hard for everyone. Sometimes if you're the new coach for a team, maybe some of the philosophies or maybe the drills and exercises or the methods that you're doing things, they're so new and so different that it's hard for everybody else to adapt to that as well. So I think being mindful of that is going to help with bridging that gap. Other things to help bridge that gap is to just listen, be a really good listener so you can learn from others and diversify your learning. Also observing, pay more attention to what people do than what they say. That's going to help you with that learning and bridging that gap. And then finally, endure. It's going to take a lot of time. It's not going to be easy. It's going to require patience. It's going to be uncomfortable, but endure through it. And so finally, empowering others. I think this is a great little excerpt from the Chop Wood, Carry Water book. And then, ultimately as coaches, we're helping our athletes to be better. We're helping them to grow outside of their comfort zones. We're helping them to build all these qualities and skills, and to remember that in the process of us helping others to grow and to build, we're indeed doing that ourselves too. So just keeping that in mind. Finally, last thing I want to leave you guys with is that integrity it's not easy. It's not something to take lightly. And I'm by no means a poster woman for integrity. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. My aim is just do my best every day to live with integrity, learn from my mistakes, own them along the way. And so I really appreciate this quote, which says, I'm not what I ought to be. I'm not what I want to be. Not what I'm going to be, but I'm thankful I am not what I used to be. And so that is what I've got for you guys today. I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak on this. And like I said, I'm open to any other questions or conversations. Feel free to, that's my cell phone number if you want to text or email. I'd be more than happy to do that. So yeah, thank you everybody. I appreciate it.
Beth, I love that presentation. I look forward to reaching out to you and just talking about that a little more depth in the future. So next up, guys, it's my honor to introduce Emily Schilling. Emily Schilling in high school was a hooper, a cross-country runner, and I also heard from a former staff member at Illinois that she was a badass deadlifter. She currently resides in Champaign, and she works for the University of Illinois. She just recently got accepted into their Illini Executive Academy. She currently works with their volleyball, men's golf, women's tennis programs. In her last few stops at Hofstra, Villanova, Northern Colorado, she's worked with a various number of sports, some of those being women's basketball, softball, women's soccer, just to name a few. And I know from experience the different personalities and cultures, that you find when working with these teams and those sorts of programs. So I cannot wait to hear what she has to say. So without further ado, everybody, I give you Emily Schilling.
All right, now that I've figured out how to mute myself here. First time screen sharing, so someone frantically wave their arms if you can't see what my screen says. Also, my microphone sometimes has a tendency to start screaming at you. So if that starts happening, again, someone just stop me and say, we did not understand a word you just said in the last 10 seconds. So with that being said, thank you, JD, for, the intro. Like Lainey said, I'm going to be talking about Illinois volleyball today. Going to kind of retract more some X's and O's here talking. So just talk about the level system and how I program here at Illinois with our volleyball team. So like JD said, originally from Wisconsin, and here's a visual representation of, all the places I've been, all 10 addresses in 9 years, I think it was there at one point. But what I want to specifically talk about today is my time here at the University of Illinois. So I got here September 12th, 2016. And so it was right before Big Ten volleyball season happened. So I'm coming in already to kind of a hectic preseason they were having. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I don't know my elbow from my foot right now. I don't know these girls. I don't know these coaches. I'm just going to ride this thing out for the season. Probably, what most of us do, just kind of play it safe, kind of get a feel for it, just kind of ride it out, do what they have been doing. Don't rock the boat too much. Just keep doing what they've been doing, right? So history of Illinois volleyball is like you make the tournament, right? And that season, 2016, we did not make the tournament. And so when it came to the coaches, the girls, the athletic trainer, support staff, everyone's lives just erupted, right? Like what is happening? This isn't like Illinois volleyball. Everyone was just a hot mess. And I'm sitting there like, well, I don't know any better. I don't really know the culture. I know that there's history behind this, but I don't know the severity of what not making the tournament means, right? So we go into winter break, right? Just everyone cried out over winter break. Spring happens and I got everyone on about 40 different pages here, right? Like I run into roadblocks, probably something different in nature every single day, which is what I'm trying to show here. We got a brand new head coach, we got a whole new coaching staff, and I got a brand new ATC, all within about 3-4 months of one another. So me and one of the assistant coaches, we're all trying to hold this thing together with 9 returners at the time. Everyone all upset about not making the tournament. We have to be better and blah, 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 right? Me trying to figure out playing style, how does this new head coach want to play, because it's going to be different probably than the last head coach. With that being said, he wants this specific style of play. So what does his athletes need to look like? I got outside hitters that are tall, very lanky. I got outside hitters that, are pretty heavy jumpers, right? I got, little stocky girls playing in the back row. I got, girls with skinny toothpick legs running around in the back row. I got kids who, their weight room competency, like they understand the weight room, they've been in it, they've done it in AAU ball, travel ball, high school. I got kids who couldn't give, a damn about being in the weight room. They hated it. They hated every time they had to walk into it, right? I had kids who they liked being in the weight room, but they had zero confidence being in the weight room. I had kids who had been in the weight room for maybe, 2 months worth of experience. I've had kids who've been in a weight room since they were age 12. I have return to play protocols that me and the former athletic trainer, now transitioning into the new athletic trainer, we're starting to work on. So I got kids coming back from injury, kids coming back from surgery. I have 7 returners, like I said, who are all a hot mess and all crabby and all mad that we didn't make the tournament. And to top it off, I have 9 freshmen coming in summer 2017. And we know off-season, strength and conditioning coach, right, spends the most time with these athletes. So I'm trying to incorporate all 40 of these bubbles, right, into one thing. And that is, how do we win with something new being thrown at me every single day? Like something new is happening, something wrong is happening every single day. So how do I get everyone on the same page? So I created the level system, and that's plain and simple, just what we call it, the level system. You can see here, right, all laid out how I organize it. why it was so important to create like levels for the athletes is, like you saw, I had girls in every different direction. Kids who lifted a lot, kids who didn't lift a lot, kids who hated the weight room, loved the weight room, kids who needed, extra time in the weight room, kids who, hey, like, you don't need as much volume, you need more, velocity-based training type stuff. This kid needs more hypertrophy, this kid doesn't, right? So how do I kind of break this up into groups and get every single kid what they need? So for me, it was about showing the coaching staff and being on the same page with the coaching staff that every single kid is getting what they need, based on being the best athlete that they can be up on the court, right? And I think most importantly, it was super important for the student athletes to finally take ownership of the weight room. Just getting in the weight room, one, on time, but one, being dressed in actual Illini gear, and then taking what you're doing in the weight room seriously so that it transfers up to the court. So that's where I came up with this level system and how I've adapted it the last 3 years, going on 4 now, and how I train the girls, on an annual basis here. So getting into it a little bit more, level 1. Right, those are always going to be my freshmen, probably more than likely my transfers, depending where they come from, as well as my return to play athletes. Big focus with them, because I'm always assuming they have no weight room experience, and I want them to do it, I guess, essentially my way, or the Illinois Illini way, right? I'm assuming they have no experience. So my focus with them is just movement efficiency, to move effectively and to educate them on anything and everything weight room, right? That includes change of direction, that includes conditioning. I'm trying to give them a ton of variety, and expose them to as much different stimuli as I can in terms of the exercise type that I'm giving them, right? So I focus that entire freshman year, from June when they show up in my weight room through December after the tournament is done. I focus on 1x20 with everything that they do, whether it's, something power development, strength development, rep effort development, anything like that. It's a version of 1x20, and they work on that from June all the way through December. Very linear based. Hey, if you feel good, instead of picking up the 25-pound dumbbell, pick up the 27.5 today. And we just slowly make small jumps like that all the way from June through December, right? Level 2, right? They were just coming out of the tournament. And they're going to be a sophomore, training for their sophomore season. My focus with them then shifts towards strength, right? We've kind of laid down the foundation, the whole 1x20, you've been through that, right? I'm trying to get you strong as hell now, right? It's more non-linear, it's more wave-like. And I still throw everything at you as well. Like, I'm going to front squat you, deadlift you, press you, but accessory wise, like, I'm probably going to load you heavier, load you differently, whether it's 1 arm, 2 arms, I might load you overhead. I just try to throw more variety at them that way, as well as I start introducing contrast training. So like, if we squat really heavy, like, here's a band, go do some overspeed stuff, but the band is really light. It's not a heavy band by any means. Going into level 3, which is going to be training for their junior year, I focus more on speed, rate of force development, speed, power at this point. So if I did what I was supposed to do, or they did what they were supposed to do their sophomore year and got strong as hell, right? Why do I need to keep getting them stronger, right? That's my opinion. Why do I need to keep getting them stronger, right? I don't need them to squat 2 times their body weight to be a better volleyball player. I need them to work fast, and work on more speed and power at this point, right? More advanced movements. By that, I mean every single phase, and I program in 3-week blocks. I'll program, like, a different exercise. So for example, if we front squat the first phase, I'll back squat the second phase. The third phase will safety squat bar. Fourth phase, I'll come back to the front squat again. So I'm constantly changing movements on them, as well as contrast training. Training gets a little bit more complicated, probably starting to introduce more French contrast type stuff, as well as accommodating resistance in season. In season, I switched to more accommodating resistance type stuff. And then something I finally got the chance to mess around with this year a little bit, before we got shut down by COVID, right, was this level 4 concept, right? My 2B seniors. My 2B seniors are, training for their senior season right now. They came in with me that summer 2017. So I've been able to see them grow all 3 years, going on their 4th now. And same thing as level 3. But I transitioned more into like a block periodization format with them. And I focus very much on, like if this is a power block, if this is a straight power, we need to work power. Like that's what that entire block is going to be across the board, from the power or block 1, to our block 2 with squatting, to our accessories. It's all going to be power based, right? And just like level 3, we got the contrast training in there. We got accommodating resistance in season as well. So very broad strokes I painted there with how my level system goes. And with that, things that I've learned over the years, right? Prerequisites that I make sure that I've checked over the years in order for this system or this process to work. And that's making sure that my head coach, my coaching staff, my student athletes, and my athletic trainers are all on the same page. Like they know what the level system entails, what it includes, who's on what level, what that level, what they're supposed to be working on any given time of the year. As well as you need to have competent student athletes. And what I mean by that is if you got, a team that every day they come in and they're like, coach, what's a lat pull down? Like that's probably a team or a kid like that's not going to work well within this level system, because they're always focusing on someone else. Like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing next. And like, they'll go do it, right? Instead of focusing on what they're supposed to be doing in their development. Make sure you have manpower, right? I have a lot of, interns running around, paid part-timers that help me with this system. Like, hey, I'll take the level 1s today. You go take level 2s, you go take level 3s, and so on. Make sure you have manpower to help you so that every group is getting coached. Next, space. Make sure you have space. If my level 1s, like our training, like they'll all be on the same racks together. My level 2s will all be on the same racks together, 3s and 4s. I'll never have a level 1 with a level 4. It just upsets the level 4s. Like the seniors who know what they're doing, they just want to go. They don't want to be held back by a level 1, right? So make sure you have enough rack space in the weight room. Make sure you have enough time in the weight room, like annually. And what I mean by that is if your kids don't train majority of the year with you, like I program 48 out of 52 weeks a year for volleyball. They're doing something. So if you don't see them continuously and consistently on an annual basis, this level system probably doesn't really make sense. Make sure you have time to program. Any given time, I can have 2, 3, 4 different levels happening in the weight room at a given time. Make sure you have enough time to program for essentially 4 different teams, right? And then lastly, make sure you have some sort of like evaluation process. Like for me, it's all subjective. Like, hey, athlete A freshman year, they crushed 1x20. No, she's not the strongest yet, but she's pretty damn efficient, right? At every single movement, she can hit ranges of motion. She hits them well. And she showed up, she wasn't injured. She took it seriously. Cool, you can be a level 2. So for me, it's very subjective. I know from a football standpoint, when I was a part of a program that ran this, it was very objective. They had to hit very certain, specific numbers per position group in order to, attain a different level as they got older through the program. But yeah, just make sure you have some sort of evaluation process, because you will probably get asked by the head coach, the student athletes, the athletic trainer, what your basis for, moving a kid up or down is, or keeping them at the same level. And then just some resources. Obviously this is being recorded, so you guys can always go back and take a look at, the professionals that I follow. Just always, take a peek at and make sure, the things that I'm thinking in my head are kind of lining up with the research and stuff that's being done out there. And yeah, thanks, Indiana Strength for having me. And if, like I said, if anyone wants to talk more in detail and, less in broad strokes and more detail, about exactly how I program, like my contact information is there. Feel free to, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, and we can get something set up.
Excellent. Emily, I appreciate that and just sharing that information. I think a big takeaway for me and probably a lot of individuals is having a system in place for success is what allows us to continue as a profession. And it's one of those things that allows us to be taken seriously as a profession as well. Just having a well thought out system that's cohesive and all those spokes in the wheel, so to speak, kind of work together. And Beth, honestly, I love what you said, and I like that quote about cockroaches and dinosaurs. Could probably tell you a few stories about some cockroaches I've seen that are, I wish they were gone, but regardless, I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker today. We first met a number of years ago at a conference through a mutual friend of ours that is actually now my fiance. Sorry to those you didn't know, but at the time I remember thinking, she seems pretty cool. I wonder how many play shirts I'll be able to get. And in later interactions, that thought changed more from, man, she remembered my name, which is pretty cool in today's society is a big thing. And it's definitely big for me. And just through many conversations with mutual friends, colleagues, and even listening to her speak at NSCA conferences, or even just the numerous video series that are now put out through Play, one thing was clear to me, and pardon kind of the slang, but she's a real one, right? If you've ever had an encounter with her, but I have no doubt that encounter was genuine. It was honest. She's an authentic individual. She definitely doesn't know this, but she's one of few people that actually sparked me coming out of my anti-networking shell, so to speak. And if you haven't watched Play's Coaching in Quarantine series, I don't know where you've been, but you should. You'll see her interviewing and just having conversations with a ton of solid guests like Andrea Hootie, Megan Young, Ryan Metzger, and it goes on. She's gone from being a stud soccer player at Stony Brook to one of their future Hall of Famers, and now she's the Associate Director for Performance and Education at Play. I'm proud to introduce our next guest because I think that everything she says just comes from a great place. And without further ado, Marissa Viola, the floor is yours.
Well, damn, Will. I mean, like, I'm looking at some of my friends on the screen and they're just like smiling, and I just got more nervous than I was before, but thank you so much for that incredible introduction. I guess I just need to hit you up the next time I do a presentation, because I mean, I've never been introduced to like that before. So thank you so much. Thank you also to Indiana Strength for allowing me to be a part of this today. I've been able to follow you guys, and you know, obviously what we do at Play, we're always trying to you know, partner with people that are innovative, and the fact that you guys have created this series has been absolutely tremendous for everybody that's been involved, both speakers and attendees. So thank you, and thank you for the entire staff. I'm not going to go through everybody, but I think I've been in touch with 4 or 5 of you since this whole thing has gone down. So I don't want to miss anybody, but thank you to every single one of you. I'm only supposed to speak for 10 minutes. It's going to be as fast as possible because I have a really awesome topic to bring to you today. It was just something, you know, Will kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, I pride myself in authenticity. And if you know me personally, you know that is through and through what I constantly strive to do, is to expose that and to share that with others to hopefully bring it out in them as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Also, if you hear anything in the background, it's my 11-and-a-half-week-old puppy snoring. So he has to be by me most of the day. So he's right beside me, and yeah, he's snoring away. Without further ado, authenticity, discovery, and resolution. I am the Associate Director of Performance Education. I'm also the Northeast Sales Consultant. Based on my strength and conditioning background, it's really not about sales for me. It's really just about connecting. Let's see, how do I do this? Do I click? Okay, cool. All right, so objectives today, much like kind of Beth also kind of lined out her presentation. At the end of the day, I want you guys to better learn who you are as a person, as a professional, and kind of how you want to take that information and use it to your advantage. So what is your authentic self? When you do find authenticity, you know, you have to decide who you are, and you got to stick with it. I think it's so important, especially in this industry. There's so many different ways to train athletes. There's so many different ways to coach. But when you become you, stick with it, you know, live and die by it, and let people know that that's what you're about and that's who you are. So there's kind of 3 parts to it. It's your personality, your character, and your beliefs. I also forgot to start a timer, so now I'm gonna start. So I'm gonna say it's 10 minutes from now. So your personality, you know, Ron McKeefer is a former supervisor of mine, and he introduced me to the Gary Smalley personality test. You know, it's so important, I think, for you to discover the personality that you have, or the personality type that you possess. But I think it's even more of a victory when you find out the personality types of those who are around you in the workplace, and anyone that's personal to you, you know, any of your personal friends or family. Basically, it's a lion, otter, beaver, retriever. You know, you might categorize yourself as 1 or 2, maybe, you know, one or the other. But basically, a lion is going to be your, you know, super boisterous, loud in control, my way or the highway, you know, great at discipline, but maybe not as great as connecting with people. Your otter is going to be your fun-loving coach that, you know, they're the ones that's always bopping to the beat. You know, they tend to be the coaches that are constantly connecting with athletes, but not always the best when it comes to discipline. Your retriever is that loyal coach. They're always going to, you know, you never got to worry about them listening or, you know, doing what they're asked, but they're going to sit back and they're going to observe, and they're going to take it all in. And sometimes they're not going to speak up. They're going to let everybody else speak before they do. And then the beaver, think about a beaver building a dam. They're super meticulous. You know, they're going to be your note keepers, you know, your sticky note people, your sticky note coaches. We all know who they are. But I mean, we probably have all labeled ourselves just by hearing a little bit of that. And, you know, it's okay if that you're, you know, really high on one, but you have tendencies of the others. You know, it's kind of a conglomerate, but again, I think it's more of a victory to figure out what the personality types are, the people that are around you. So your character, you know, this is your mental and moral compass, you know, what you're about, how you treat others. I kind of listed a couple things here. You know, do you help your interns? Or are you just commanding and demanding of them, as opposed to helping them and sharing experiences with them? A big thing for me, this is a lesson I learned before I became a full-time assistant. I had a coach ask me, you know, do you say hi to the maintenance staff? Do you say hi to the grounds crew? You know, what type of relationships do you have with these people? And it, you know, really made me, you know, realize that, okay, it's not just about, making friends with administration, right? It's about making friends and creating those professional friendships with everybody. You know, for those that don't know me, my fiance is the head football strength coach at Maryland, and he has one guy assigned on the maintenance staff to the weight room, and we have him over for Thanksgiving. He comes over for cookouts, you know, obviously before the quarantine. But then when he gets to go home to Guatemala, he brings us back gifts unexpectedly. And it's purely because we've allowed him into our circle. And he knows that we care about him. And so just think about making impacts in other people's lives. So it's your character. The last thing, you know, are you approachable? And I just want to bring up one thing on your resume. You know, references is always such a big part of our resume, but sometimes as coaches, we forget that we have coaching references, but we need to have character references. So, you know, I might have a former soccer coach that's a coaching reference, but the deputy chief of athletics is going to be a character reference, because she might never have seen, or he might never have seen me coach one-on-one, but they know who I am as a person. And I think it's really important when you're putting your resume together that you have coaching references and you also have character references on there. And then the last part of it is your beliefs. Where did they come from? What molded them? Where does your research come from? Who are your influencers? These can change over time, but at the end of the day, when you combine all of these, hopefully that's going to help you find your authentic self. So the next part is finding your freedom. And I know I'm going through this fast, so hope you're fast note takers. You know, this is where you're going to step out of your rhythm. You're going to break away from the monotonous everyday life. Sometimes you may be forced or pushed out of this rhythm, but that's usually when you gain a new perspective. So take this as a positive push or a positive derailing. Two things come with this. Usually when you do gain a broader perspective, it's usually failure or success is going to occur. And we're going to touch on this in a later slide, but make sure that you understand this. It's as simple as this. Failure is simply change, and success is having satisfaction. Again, I'm going through this fast. I'm like going faster than I originally thought I was. So the first time I did this presentation, it was a much longer and drawn out presentation with a lot more slides, but I actually got to do this presentation in Poland nonetheless. And so I thought it was only appropriate to have a Polish statesman as one of my quotes. And he was one of the first marshals of Poland. So I thought it was really cool. To be defeated and not submit is victory. To be victorious and rest on one's laurels is defeat. So just to pick apart that or break it down, that first part, to be defeated and not submit is victory, that's basically being in control of your reactions. So Charles R. Swindoll says that 10% of what life happens, 10% of life is what happens to you, but 90% of life is how you react to it. And I think that's so important. And it goes back to lean on your authenticity and who you are, trying not to be reactive, but be proactive, and just understand that sometimes that can turn people off before you can even get a solid statement out of your mouth if something were to happen. One way to help navigate this is practicing gratitude. So I got my girl Oprah Winfrey on here. We all know that she's a BA. So basically, how do you sustain gratitude? I'm not going to go ahead and read the quote. I just think it's solid. But when you're filled with so much gratitude in your life, that's when extraordinary things can happen. But if you ignore gratitude, that's when you're swayed by events. So like I said, the last thing you want to do is be influenced and be reactive. And instead, you want to actually sit back and see it for face value and understand what's going on. Obviously, sometimes things don't go as planned, shit hits the fan, nothing's all great. I'm not asking you to pretend that it is. However, when you can, like I said, when you can look back and say, hey, that sucked, but I learned from it, that is gratitude. And it's not equal to happiness always. It's always, I think, I don't remember if it was who said this previous to me, but you want to find the people that are going to tell you what you don't want to hear, right? And so that's kind of that's involved with the gratitude piece of this. So I said previously, talking about failure and success, failure, you have to understand that it's growth. It's not the end of the world. You can't control the hand that you're dealt, but you can control the way that you're going to play it. Success, how do you define it? That's up to you. So your salary, your family, wins versus losses, or just simply having a good day. Success is wonderful until you become complacent, right? So avoiding complacency, you have to understand your environment and you have to stay one step ahead. If you don't get anything up until what I said at this point, make sure that you fail with gratitude, but you succeed with grit. Again, try to fail with gratitude, but succeed with grit, and you're always going to come out on top. So understanding your environment and using it to your advantage, look around, observe, be a retriever for once. If you're a retriever already, this is going to be the easier part for you. Okay. How are you going to navigate it? How are you going to use it to your advantage? So for example, if your boss is a lion, and he's asking for something to be done, to be short, simple, to the point, and really command or demand the respect that you're asking, or the belief that you're asking of him that you know what you're doing. On the other hand, if your coworker is struggling with this lion boss and he's a beaver and he's super caught up in all the little minuscule tasks of what's going on or how to complete this, this task at hand, you can go ahead and jump in and help in that way as well. So it's so important to understand your environment. Again, gaining a broader perspective, a new perspective, and seeing what's going on around you. So the wholeness part of it, it's about putting together your authenticity and your freedom, and how do you establish your culture with confidence. You have to be open to the lesson of wholeness as it implores us to pursue what we are made of. You have two choices to make when you're establishing this culture. You can use this new discovery and keep it to yourself, or you can help, you can share it and help and empower someone else. I think it's so important. We are a service industry. There is no reason why you shouldn't do the latter. Discovering these things, you need to go ahead and turn around and show someone else how you did this, how you found your authenticity, how you discovered freedom, and how you put them together, because you're only going to make this industry better if you learn how to do that for others. I also live by a base, so if you hear massive planes flying overhead, that's what that is. Anyway, so obviously at this point, you might have discovered that life is not as easy as you thought it should be. And this slide always makes me laugh because inexperienced individuals think that, all right, I'm going to be an intern, then I'm going to get a GA position at this school, then I'm going to become assistant director, and director at a Power 5 school. And it's really funny that the reality is this, and you can't avoid this. So there's going to be ups and downs and roller coasters and dead ends, and you might get fired, and you might become unhappy, and you might, you might hit a wall, shit could hit the fan. But if you can navigate this with gratitude, I promise you, you are going to be better off. Again, if you can fail with gratitude, but succeed with grit, this whole journey is going to be a whole lot easier. So again, how are you going to use your platform? How are you going to learn this new self-discovery? Is it going to be speaking engagements? I've had the opportunity and the chance to share and give back to our industry, and it just so happened is something that I love. But I have to tell you, 4 years ago, I was scared shitless to do this. I didn't think I could ever do this, whether it was virtual, whether it was in a room full of 150 people or more. I didn't know I was going to travel across the world to do this, and here I am. Dive into it. If you want to start small, do a little research, write an article. I think social media is pretty easy, but again, go back to your authentic self. Don't just post videos of lifting over and over again. You're hard to connect with if you're just posting the same thing over and over again. Make sure that you're showing that you're human. Your student athletes are going to connect with you more on that level too. Or obviously volunteer to be part of a podcast. So again, there are so many different platforms. Again, we're in a service industry, use it wisely. So the last piece of this is resolution. You find yourself now reflecting, deciding on what the plan's going to be and the steps that you're going to take. I gratefully and luckily actually took this picture from my hometown. And it was just, there's so much to say about this picture, but that reflection and, that new growth is really something that resonated with me. And know that resolve, it can unify a beginning, but it also can unify an ending, as long as you're prepared to, again, gain that new perspective, take a step back, but know that you're not done yet. So love this quote, Theodore Roosevelt. I use it in multiple of my presentations. Just to sum up what we got today, again, I know I'm a couple minutes over, but authenticity. Find the courage to be authentic. Not everyone's going to like you. That's okay. It's probably because they haven't had a chance to get to know you. Stay on your path no matter what, no matter how many turns, no matter how many roller coasters or dead ends that you hit. Freedom. Avoid stopping at the first sign of failure. Push through and be open to learning. You'll discover more success that way, and make sure that you have gratitude along the way. Wholeness, take the chance and to be freed of monotony, look inward to empower others outwardly. And lastly, resolution. Change may lead you to question yourself. Life will rarely end up the way that you thought it would be. Part of your resolution is learning what you know now and breaking the mold so that you can grow into a better you. So without further ado, that was my 15-minute presentation when it was supposed to be 10. But again, I'm so grateful that I could be a part of this. That's my contact info. And please let me know what more I can do for any of you. You can reach out to me in any way. And I just want to say thanks again to Indiana Strength that's put this on.
Awesome. Thank you, Marissa. That was great. And I love that your whole topic was about being authentic, because I feel like every single time I've seen you present or just seen you talk, I've walked away thinking, man, she's real, you know? So I just thought it was funny. It was a perfect topic for you. So great job. So I have the pleasure of introducing our last speaker, Coach Jeannie Rankin. And Coach Rankin has over a decade's worth of experience in the field of strength and conditioning. And she is now currently the director of strength and conditioning at Eastern Connecticut State University. So when I was doing my research on Coach Rankin, I found a couple of things that I thought were really interesting about her. So one is that she has an awesome French bulldog named Johnny. And as a dog lover myself, I just thought that was great. And two, in a couple of the podcasts that I listened to that she was on, I noticed that she really valued the collaborative effort it takes working with your sport coaches. And I just think that's an incredibly important factor when you're trying to build a program that's best for your athletes. So without further ado, Coach Rankin, the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Well, Kevin, I appreciate that introduction, and I definitely am glad that that personality kind of came through those different platforms. So let me go ahead and get this all set up before I start talking here. All right, so kind of like everybody else has jumped in, I would like to say, thank you to IU Strength for having me on. This has been a great platform during quarantine. And it's fun to actually, be asked to present on this stuff and kind of share stuff that I'm very passionate about. So I was happy that I was going last here. It gives me time to sit back and listen to everybody else's presentations. But I thought it was kind of funny that I'm bringing up the back, just like I always did in college too. I played soccer. I think Sarah Ramey, one of my former strength coaches from college, is on this call. And Ramey would know that I always brought up the back in conditioning. So doing it here as well. So presentation today is about diversity in strength and conditioning. This is something that's always been important to me, but I think especially now with everything that's going on in the country, seemed like a great time to talk about it. So topics we'll cover today: why diversity is important in our field, what is the current landscape, how do we do better, and then lastly, kind of like a few people were saying previously, 10 minutes is kind of a small time frame. It's a new challenge for me. I'm a talker. So if anybody wants to follow up on this stuff, I'll have my contact info at the end. Definitely feel free to reach out in any sort of capacity. But really, like I said, I just want to spark some dialogue. I've seen some threads on different Twitter feeds and things like that that got me thinking, some experience I have as a female have been very similar to what maybe I've seen for Black strength and conditioning coaches in the field, and just things that, different minorities might deal with. All right, so first kind of going over why diversity is important. So I've got some statistics here. I kind of stole them from Brittany Collins' presentation. It was last Wednesday at the University of Cincinnati Women's Clinic. And I want to bring up with that too. First off, I want to give her credit for finding these stats, and then I cited them at the end. But I think we sometimes tend to shy away from stuff we don't view as our own thing. So there weren't a ton of men in on this clinic, and I would encourage more men to join in on it. In strength and conditioning, we're always challenged to learn about programs we don't understand and talk to people that maybe we don't agree with. And I'd say the same thing here. If you want to get more of a female perspective on things, not that that's what the clinic was all about, but hop in on that stuff, talk to me, reach out to anyone you know. I know that, for example, with the racial tension that's going on in the country, I find it my duty to kind of research and educate myself on that stuff. So my wife and I have bought a handful of books that we plan on rolling through. But just kind of encouraging people to kind of go outside of what they know. I will also say, if you want to view that presentation, just get a hold of someone on the Olympic strength and conditioning staff, and they're more than happy to help you guys out with that. So the 2017 statistics, these blew my mind when I saw these. So 1 in 10 young people experienced a period of major depression. Young adults aged 18 to 25, which is the age group that we work with, had the highest prevalence of mental illness at about 1 in 4. And then you can see the statistics for adults and 50 and older. And then this is speaking on adolescents, but nearly 1 in 3 adolescents in the US meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder. That blew my mind. I had no clue the statistics were like that. So it did definitely open my eyes to all that. Kind of playing off that, so some extra stressors for our student athletes. They've got financial stress, performance, pressure to win, academics, missing classes and tests for team travel, social life, lack of sleep, poor nutritional habits. And if you know how much lack of sleep can contribute to things like anxiety and poor nutritional habits, becomes a pretty big deal. I did want to hit on too, just extra stressors for minority groups. So I think if we don't understand some of the extra stressors right now with everything that's going on in the world or in the US, then it's time to really dive deep into this stuff. But on the female side, dating violence, sexual assault, and sexual harassment are some things that a lot of that women might have to deal with. I had presented for the CSECA virtual clinic, and I found a statistic. It was something around 90% of women in the US claim to have been sexually harassed. So just thinking about that stuff as you work with your female athletes and then, you know, any female coworkers, those are some pretty alarming numbers to consider. As far as racial minorities, you know, talking about microaggressions and stereotypes. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the whole, you know, I think it was surrounding something LeBron James had said, just telling professional athletes to shut up and dribble and stuff like that. So just considering all those things that our athletes and our coworkers deal with. So after that, strength and conditioning coaches spend a lot of time with student athletes, kind of goes into why diversity is important. Strength and conditioning coaches do not decide playing time. And I think all that kind of plays into how student athletes might show us their vulnerable side more so than they might another staff member. I think also they're perhaps more likely to open up because we can empathize with them. So one thing that a lot of us can connect to is injury. A lot of us strength coaches or former athletes maybe have been injured. I did my ACL in college, and I haven't had very many, knock on wood, kids who tore their ACL, but they know they've got someone that they can talk to that's got good perspective on that stuff and who can really empathize with them. I also have had a female athlete come up and talk to me because she thought she was kind of developing an eating disorder. Had another athlete talk to another female coworker about dating violence. And both of those athletes did, you know, state that they wouldn't have been comfortable coming up to a male strength coach. And then, you know, most of their coaching staff, if not all, was a male. One thing I'm very open and honest about, and already have been, I think, during this presentation, is just that I'm in a same-sex marriage. So I've been the first person that a handful of student athletes have come out to. And it was important for them to be able to express that to someone in a very, very safe environment. And then I'll kind of touch on too, racial minorities. You know, I have pretty open discussions with a lot of my kids about that stuff. But I do not think that, you know, one of my Black or Hispanic Latino athletes would discuss their deep, dark fears with me. I think you tend to discuss those issues with people who look a little bit more like you. And so even if they don't know my own personal experiences, they might be more likely to discuss that stuff with people who look like them. And so the reason this is really important, especially right now, is we're looking at these mental illness, depression, anxiety rates, and they're going to be going up. I think everybody understands those are going up right now amidst everything that's going on in this country. So now that we've talked about why diversity is important, I want to kind of go over quickly what the current landscape is. So gender, and I got these statistics from the NCAA website. male strength coaches, 85% of our college, and this is across all divisions, strength coaches are males, 15% are female. And then you compare that to the student athlete population, where we've got 56% male and 44% female. So just kind of highlighting the difference there. You know, when you compare those two things, and I'm not saying that they need to be equal, but it is important, I think, to highlight that stuff, that the representation of male strength coaches is 30% higher, about 30% higher than the student athlete population. And on the flip side, for females, it's about 30% lower. Okay, so looking at race and ethnicity, I think these slides will be up later. And like I said, I got them from the NCAA website. What I want to highlight mostly is if you look at Black strength coaches, 14% of NCAA strength coaches are Black, and 21% of our student athletes across all divisions are Black. So if you're thinking about a staff of 13 people, that would be one person on staff. Sorry, the difference with that is 7%. So if you had a staff of 13 people, if you changed that ratio and added one strength coach, that would bump it up 7%. That might, hopefully that came across okay. And then looking at the non-resident alien, only thing I want to bring up with that, because if you can see strength and conditioning coaches, it's 0.4%, whereas student athletes at 6%, is how many of us have ever thought about hiring a strength and conditioning coach from a different country to work for our university? I know sometimes there's paperwork to go through, but we do have a lot of us have a good number of international student athletes, and I think potentially it could help them to have a international strength and conditioning coach. All right, so the meat of my talk. Sorry, I'm going over already. I'm going to try to blow through this. So how do we get better? First off, I want to say I'm not saying anybody should go out there and fire people on their staff. That's not what I'm saying to do. I'm asking us to all kind of look at this stuff through a little bit different lens, okay? So I think this really sparked in my head when, I was told kind of coming into the field, there aren't many good females out there. And that always used to frustrate me. And I would say there's plenty of females in the field at this point. And I'm going to go into how we kind of help different minorities along. But one of my favorite quotes that I've seen recently is from Maya Angelou. It's do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So what I'm just kind of asking is that we use this information and move forward with it. Okay. So educate yourself. We've been hearing that a lot recently. Identify why diversity is important. So I would say having women on staff is important to get a female perspective on things, whether that's body image issues, whatever it might be. But also there's male and female athletes who are raised in a mother-only home, and perhaps they respond a little bit better to having a female in charge. Another minority, having a Black strength and conditioning coach is just dealing with having a perspective on what our Black athletes might deal with on a daily basis. Like we talked about the microaggressions and stuff like that, just having a little bit of that perspective. And then just like having a female, it's a good role model to have. It's, someone who's an authority figure showing those athletes, hey, if you work hard, you can get to this, you can be a strength coach, you can have the impact that I do on a daily basis. So identify the struggles for each minority. I cover a lot of that on my presentation that I did for the CSCCA. So I don't want to touch on that way too much, but I do think it's important to really look into that stuff. I kind of relate it back to one of the big struggles being a female is the salary. I've had on an interview before had someone say, hey, I find it really important to have a female on staff. And then I realized he left it to his last hire, which was going to be the least amount of money. And so I would just kind of ask everyone, and myself included, to look at that and say, hey, if that's really important to you, then don't leave it for the last hire. And identifying our own personal biases. So just one I read on my virtual presentation for the CSCCA was from the book Untamed. And it was talking about shampoo labels and how even there it's saying that men are supposed to be dominant on a man's shampoo bottle, but on a women's shampoo bottle, it's talking about how you should be more submissive. So there's a lot of areas of our lives that we get those biases from, and I think it's really important to kind of look into that stuff. So going into hiring, so actively seek out young minority strength and conditioning coaches for internships. So really kind of working to bring those people on board, actively seek them out for full-time positions, and then have a list of minority strength and conditioning coaches for when you get a call about an opening. If you have questions on how to do that, I would just say the best answer is that we all need to network a little bit better. You should know, a female, a person of multiple different racial backgrounds that you can reach out to if you have an opening, if you know of an opening, and all that type of stuff. Visibility, having minorities in leadership roles. So whether you've got a minority on staff who's the intern coordinator who has a big impact on the next generation of strength and conditioning coaches, whether you have a minority on your staff present in an all staff meeting so that your entire athletics department gets to see how good they are presenting, how much stuff they know, all that type stuff. And then encouraging those people on your staff to present at conferences and events, just like you're kind of seeing today. Mentorship, so supporting minorities, and that might be financially. So I will say that the cheap, easy way to do it, cold call a respected minority in the field. So I know previous strength coaches that I've worked with, if they've got a female intern, they say, hey, call Coach Rankin, she'll put you on a good path. And I'm more than happy to talk to those people. There are also some different memberships that you can get, whether it's women's leaders or We Coach. Those things cost money. And if you're making $30,000 a year, sometimes it's hard to pay for that stuff. So if able, maybe offering up that you can help pay for that. Training, so staff training, cultural education, diversity training. I think that's something we're all learning that a lot of our universities haven't done a good job with. So figuring out how you can get some better training on that. I will say one person I've started following recently is Jen Fry. And if you'd like that information, please get in touch with me. But also partnering with your diversity and inclusion group on campus can help out a lot. Just continuing to talk and be vulnerable and showing people that you don't know everything, but you're willing to learn. And then just like we do with our athletes, setting goals and objectives. So if you have a goal in mind of what you want your staff to be like and what you want your staff to look like, start setting out goals, whether you're a director right now or whether you want to be a director in the future, start really looking at that stuff. And the last thing I kind of want to go over with that slide is that we tend to talk about the best hire being the person who, is book smart, kind of has the X's and O's. And I think maybe just kind of changing our lens with that and realizing that some people have really good life experiences. And so maybe those different life experiences are what actually qualify you to be a better strength and conditioning coach. Okay, I went way over my time. Sorry about that. There's my contact information. That's my cell phone number. Please reach out to me anytime. I can email these slides and I think they'll be posted later. And there's just some quick references there.
Coach, I want to thank you so much. Incredible topic that needs to be talked about, especially during this time, but not only this time. This is something that we're trying to make better within the world of strength conditioning, but also throughout all professions. So thank you so much. To all the speakers, I want to give a huge virtual round of applause. And thank you so much for everything on here. Quick reminders, all these talks are going to be downloaded on Indiana Strength. So I encourage you to tune on in and check them out if you've missed anything. Next week's lineup looks like Cliff Marshall, our IU basketball strength coach, the godfather of speed, Lee Taft, Candace Walls out of Louisiana Lafayette, and Becky Bonaventura from Rutgers, which is going to be another stacked up lineup. So I encourage you, if you don't subscribe already, go to Indiana Strength and subscribe to All Access. And we look forward to seeing you. Till then, Make today better than yesterday. And thank you. Coaches, thank you so much on there.
I did not do a good job with 10 minutes.